All right, so we're back. This episode of The Archive, we talked last time where we left off was if someone was getting into the game, this would be the episode where they're like, yeah, this is the tactical advice. So this isn't the motivational content, which I like listening to on Instagram and TikTok, but this is like the stories of how we started our businesses. And maybe someone can pick up on what they can do, because I think that's part of how we learn too. So without any further ado, you ready?
Yeah, well, I think I'm also excited too because I don't think you've actually heard my full story into this career, or I've not heard yours either. Really from the roots.
Okay, yeah, I think that's fair.
I think I'm excited to hear that too.
Okay, so let's give a little bit of guardrails here. So let's talk about give me a root memory of where you can look back and be like, oh, okay, it's pretty obvious moving on from there, and then fast forward in time to when you actually started learning the skills.
Yeah. So my journey actually starts on Call of Duty. No kidding. So the earliest stages of video for me were watching Call of Duty YouTube videos, and I was hooked immediately. I wasn't hooked on just the Call of Duty. I was hooked on, I saw what they were doing. I saw how they made their edits. I saw how they talked over the video. I saw people, I saw deep into that really, really quickly. And so I immediately said, oh, I want to do that. I want to make those videos. And so for me, it was how do I turn Call of Duty into telling a story? That was the roots. And I didn't really remember that was the roots until we kind of last episode I got to thinking we're going to tell our journeys. Okay, what is my journey? Where did video even the love for the game even start for me? And that is what I went back to, making Call of Duty videos. So I got a little game capture that records your gameplay, and that's pretty much what I did every single day when I was 12 years old.
Every day?
Every day.
I love this already.
No, not every day, every minute of every day.
You're obsessed at this point?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with Call of Duty, but then I became obsessed with making videos. And so I learned very quickly how to make a video, because a lot of people still don't know how to do that, which it amazes me.
And just out of curiosity, a lot of people have, this comes up in our conversations with younger creatives or early on creatives. How do you define making a video?
I think it's telling a story through, without saying the word video, I think it's making a story through capturing something. Yeah.
I love that because it hints at the art of both the filming of the thing, whether it's capturing off of a capture card or off of a camera, but also in the edit itself.
Yep.
So, okay, I interrupted you. Go on. So you're at this point, you're starting to get crazy good at both Call of Duty and the compilation videos.
I was getting good at Call of Duty. I wasn't getting good at making videos, and they're still out there. So that's the tough thing. I watch them periodically every 3 years, once every 3 years. So making videos was I just remember loving to do that. I love to see the idea that would start maybe with a song. Ooh, this would be a great song to make a video to. And so I would start with that song, and then I loved seeing the final product and everything that came in between. That was my love for video making, filmmaking. And then as I got older, I kind of realized I shouldn't be playing video games as much. And so that transitioned into a love for travel videos. I would watch travel videos for hours.
Name a few creators.
So Sam Colder, I'm gonna probably mispronounce this guy's name, but Nanoa Langer, I think it is. Those were the two guys. I would watch their videos on repeat, and it wasn't just because I was oh, I would love to be traveling. It was I want to make a video like that. I just want to make a video like that.
So it was the vision of something.
Oh yeah.
That's interesting.
They were in Hawaii, so of course it's gonna look cool. But I wasn't obsessed with the mountains or that as much. I was obsessed with the storytelling, the transitions, the color of the video, all of that. So what I did is I grabbed my mother's camera. I can't remember what it was. I grabbed my mother's camera, and I think junior to senior year of high school, I had already done a few like travel missionary videos. So like we went to Haiti, and I made a video of that trip. So I had done that a couple times, and it was cool. It was on a GoPro, but I was like, no, I need to do a summer travel like awesome video. And so I told my buddies, and I was like, hey, let's go get on this rope swing. And so like every day after football practice, we would go do this rope swing. And so the first day, I was like, we're gonna make a travel, like a summer video, right? And we went out to the rope swing, and I set it up on like the cheapest tripod in the history of tripods. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna do a backflip off the rope swing, and this is like my start right here. And so I remember I got on the swing, and I went off the rope, and the tripod head fell off, and the camera went into the water, my mom's camera. And I was like, oh my, I was distraught. And my buddy jumped in the water, and we soaked it in rice the whole night, and it was cooked. And so instead of telling my mom, I had like $1,000 in my savings. And so I spent 300 of it. She's linked to my bank account. So of course she's gonna see it, right? Like, and she works at the bank. So, so like she gets a notification, you know, like, hey, $300. What? And she's like, do you know anything about this? She asked me like a week later. And I was like, we were making a video, and your camera went in the water, and instead of telling you, I ordered the exact same camera so you wouldn't know. She's like, I haven't touched the camera in like 8 years. Like, why would I, like, you know?
You're the best rebellious son of all time.
And so that was my love for it, though. Is like, I had no idea what I was doing. Like, and I had no idea how other people were doing it. But I just love to watch to the point of like, I have to do this. And so from there, that was high school. College was kind of the same realm. Like, I just wanted to make fun videos. I loved having fun, but more so I loved capturing the fun. Like, I've always wanted to capture what I was doing. And almost to the point where it's like unhealthy. Like, I would rather, I want to do something fun just so I can capture it instead of capturing what I'm doing that's fun. You know what I mean?
So, okay, I'm gonna interrupt you again. I think what's cool about that to me is you bring that spirit into how you make videos. So one of the things I love about watching your content, whether it's your Instagram stories, your small business content, your corporate stuff, your personal brand stuff, weddings, whatever it is, there is such an element of fun in it, because I feel like, and this is just my personal take, sometimes when I'm looking at content on social media, it almost looks like it's done out of obligation to get to the next thing. So like, I'm gonna create this thing, but it's just getting me to my next thing. The feeling I always feel when I interact with your content is you had fun making it.
Yeah.
So last night you put up pictures of your trip to London, and because I'm apparently like the old grandpa on Instagram, I'm like liking each of your posts. But the one that captivated me, and I meant to tell you this last night, I want a print of the London at night one.
Oh, sweet.
Because all I could think of was, I know you, and I know that when you snapped that picture, you were like, that's a banger.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's just so much fun in that, you know? So I think that's one thing I really respect about how your story matches up with everything I know about you now. And so, yeah, that's very cool. Tell me, when you got to college, though, things really changed. So tell me more about that story, because that's the part of the story I do know about.
Yes. And I want to pivot one more time before I get to that. Like, and this is something I think I struggle with. Going back to like, you know, I'm capturing something or I'm trying to like push fun into like the thing that I want to capture. Like the other night even, I saw the sunset and it wasn't enough for me. Like I knew it was going to be a really good sunset, but it wasn't enough for me. And I think that's something like that's really tough for me, is like just being content enough with like having the moment versus capturing the moment. And so like in that moment, I had been working like all day, and I was like, I gotta go get my tripod, and I've got to set up this time lapse for this sunset because it's not enough that I can just see it right now. Like I need to capture this just so like other people can see this sunset. Like I think that's something that I don't know if I need to work on it. Like I think it's just like I don't know, it's a passion, but it's also just like I feel obligated to share the thing that I love. Like, and that's always been kind of the case.
It reminds me when I was in university, I had a narrative film production. This is the only like film class I had, and I had no idea what was going on at the time. But my professor, and like this is one of the distinct memories I have that day, made the comments. He always battled with when does the thing need to be filmed, produced, and shown versus just enjoying the magic of the moment and it never happening again through the reproduction of media content. And that's before like social media where we're sharing videos and photos all the time. So this is back in like 2009, 10 at that point, before it was ubiquitous. Yeah. And I've always thought about that. I'm like, is this one of those moments where I just need to embrace the magic that this is the only time this will ever happen?
No, that never happens.
You know?
That
like,
never needs to happen, right? We always capture it.
Because I think, well, that's where my brain goes to. And I think that's I think that a lot of us struggle, or not struggle, but contemplate. Yeah. We reflect on, there's a little bit of beauty in the fact that sunrise will never happen again.
Well, I will tell you this. When you mentioned the film I posted from like London, and I'm hooked on film because you don't get the gratitude of having what you captured immediately, and like I think that's why film's starting to become more popular, because you've got to be content with the moment because you're not getting that moment back until you go through the process of what film is, you know?
What an awesome take. I have not thought about that.
Yeah, I think that's why it's like, I think that's why film is becoming so popular again, is because people want just like a little bit of what they get in the moment versus, well, I better go edit this photo or this video immediately, but you don't get that with film. I think that's why it's like, so that's why I'm kind of hooked like already.
I love that take.
Yeah. So back to the story though. So in college, me and a few buddies, we had a vlog in college, and so we made videos every single week, and we did it for probably like an academic year. And what we would do is just have fun, like on camera. Like we would do challenges, some travel videos we did. Like it rained very hard one day, and so we went to Walmart and like we made a 75-foot slip and slide with tarps. So you know, like in Campbellsville, there's a large. So that's what we did. For
the record, and the people, we both went to the same university.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's what I did, and I didn't like. I was editing on like a laptop that took like 3 days to render the video. But like that, like I loved it.
Yeah, I get it, man.
Listen, I couldn't watch back what I was editing. I had to render it for 3 days just to watch back 15 seconds of what I was editing. Like I toughed it out for a long time. And if we're being tactical, like I think we want to be in this episode, you've just got to tough it out for a long time. Yeah. Like that, if you truly want to get started in this space of being like a creator, of being like just telling a story, like tough it out. Don't be like the people who have already made it, because you know what they did at the start? They toughed it out. Like I think that is one of the most tactical things I can give you, is like how to start a creative business. Don't worry about all the logistics, tough it out. Like, so that's what I did. I toughed it out. Like it was taking me days and days to render. But again, I fell in love with just the entire process. And now what I realized, I guess like 4 to 6 years later, is I'm so grateful I did those videos. Like now I watch them like once a year, and I'm like, man, I'm so glad like I did what I did, because it was all worth it, you know? So the end of college, after I've been making those videos, kind of like picking up, putting down video for a while, like throughout college. Like I did it here, I would do it here, I wouldn't do it for a span of time. Like it was just a hobby. And finally, someone at the university saw potential in me and said, would you like a job doing media? And I said, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess. Like, that's kind of how, like, I was doing it for fun, like, as a hobby. I was like, I mean, sure, like, I can do that. And for the next year and a half after that point, I kind of got caught in the realm of, like, that corporate type media world, which I'm very grateful for. I learned a lot, but I also learned what I didn't want to do, which was even more important. And again, I toughed it out. Like I did a lot of producing, a lot of like throw it, see if it sticks. Does it stick? No, it doesn't. Okay, that does stick. Let's run with that. And so I did that for like a year and a half to 2 years. And then simultaneously, while I'm doing that corporate media world stuff, I had businesses locally say like, would you want to do a video for me? And like, even when I look back on where I am today, and I'm not like in a place where I've arrived, no, but I get to do what I love every single day. But when I look back at like, how did I get to the place where I love what I do every single day? It's because of like a business just saw a little bit of potential in me and was willing to let me tell their story. That was one of the most powerful things I ever realized is like, they didn't, you know, they knew I was probably not going to do like the best work, but I was going to do it to the best of my ability at the time. And then even more than that, those businesses that were helping me, young female entrepreneurs in their 20s, young 20s, making six figures at the time. They had been in their industry for, you know, under 5 years, very successful, you know. And they said, why don't you create your own business through this? Like, you're already doing it. Just do it a little bit more. Do what you're good at and put a name to it and start this business. And so 3 years ago from a month, Greer Productions, my full-time business, my full-time job, my love, like for like, you know, what I get to do every single day was blossomed. Well, 3 years ago I went full-time. And throughout the last 3 years, it's kind of been throw, see what sticks. Does that stick? No. Okay, yes, that sticks. Do I love it? No. Do I want to do it? I don't know. Like, you know, it's just, I think that's what you got to do though. You got to pay the bills, but then you can also venture off and see what is it that I love to do versus what is it that is a little bit more successful, and how can I just combine the two until it slowly shifts into the thing that I love to do every single day. Yeah. And so that's been the last 3 years, is figuring that out. I think we all have to take jobs that are best for our family, best for ourselves at times, but then I think it's important that we balance it out with the things we love to do. And so I think that's why we're sitting here at the table, you know. Yeah. It's like
well, and I think one of the things I admire the most about your story is the slow build over time, because you made a point a few minutes ago where it's like, okay, you have to tough out those hard days at first, because that's kind of the weeding out process.
Yeah.
Like, you find out pretty quickly who's going to stay in the game and who isn't based on everyone who gets into this game sees the production side. They see the cinema cameras, or they see the newest thing that Sony has come out with, or Canon or Fuji or Nikon or whatever. And they see all the microphones, the drones, they see all the flashiness. Right. And so it can almost feel overwhelming when you're like, all I've got is my iPhone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so what you've done is just slowly build over time to where now, you know, we're in the archive studio and all these things are kind of coming to fruition. Right. But how long ago did you start?
I mean, we're talking 14 years
from
the, you know, like I've just accumulated knowledge from 14 years. And what's crazy is really the travel videos are what, when I saw those videos, I was like, that is what I want to do for a living. And that was when I was 14, 15. And so we're talking like 10, 11 years, that is what I wanted to do. And like, I just kind of, all you really got to do is sometimes is kind of just remember that. like keep working hard and just remember I want to get to this point. Yeah, I'm not traveling like I thought I would because like I love being home with my family. Like my priorities have shifted of what I want to do, but like the concept's still the same. Like I'm telling stories of people that are awesome, and I get to do that every single day. And that was the main goal of like what I wanted to do. But it was just a slow like every day I'm going to do this thing that's going to lead me a little closer to what I want to do for the rest of my life, you know?
Yeah.
So
what would you say is like the best, and what we can do is maybe we can like stack up practical advice at the end of this episode. I'm just making sure we're still good on our clocks over here. What's one piece of like, this is where you're going next that you would give somebody who is maybe at that initial place? So before we give all the like detailed practical advice, what's one piece that you would give someone who's like just realized, oh, I found my mom's camera, that moment?
I think the most practical advice for that person is if it's on the lines of like video photography, I think create things you love. That is the step number one. Create things you love, because if you cannot create things you love and love the process, it's probably not what you want to do. Like you don't get to get to the like end of the creation if you don't love like kind of the steps that lead up to that. And so if you don't even love the things that you have fun doing, well, you're sure not going to love the things that you don't love doing. Because like at the end of the day, we have to tell stories sometimes that are projects that aren't as fun as the others, but they keep the lights on, they put food on the table. Like we have to do those types of things. And if you're not even loving creating the things you love to do, then you're not going to love doing those other things. But I think that would be step number one, is like create things you love doing, because you'll just kind of fall in love with the process. You'll learn a lot throughout the process. And you'll slowly build an arsenal of tools that you can use later on. And that's kind of what I've done, you know.
And that's actually a really good idea for our next episode, perhaps, is to talk about what are the major pitfalls of why people don't stay in this field for very long. Because if you think about it, how old are you now? 26. I'm 33. Like, we are older creators. Like, if you think about the people who are in video production that are doing it at the level that we're doing at, there's not many people who are our age, because people burn out so quickly. So maybe in the next episode we can talk about like, hey, if you want to be in this game for a really long time, here are some things to consider. And I think your piece of advice is where I would start. Like, you just got to love it.
Well, and I think like if you're 18 years old right now, or even like if you're a young adult, it is the easiest time to ever get into it.
For sure.
That is the best news that you'll get today, is like, if you're wondering where to start, well, here's the best news. It's a lot easier to start where you are than where I was when I was 18. Like, because that was when it wasn't popular to be a creator. Like when I was 18, it was like, look at this fool, like, you know?
And the field is set up right now to where the major advantage is if you have an iPhone or a smartphone in general. I mean, I would say iPhone just because that's my experience, but like if you have an iPhone, you can make it. And I say that having done that. Like that was my experience in a lot of ways. So yeah, man, thank you for sharing that.
No problem. So will you tell me now a little bit about your creative journey?
All right, so the earliest memory I have that I loved stories was my parents were away on a trip, and so there were 5 of us at home. I was the youngest, and the person who was watching us, like my parents had left enough money for us to go rent a movie, and so we rented a movie from like, I don't know, Movie Vault or whatever it was at the time, and I wanted to watch it multiple times. Like I wanted to watch it again the next day, and the person who was watching us was like, why in the world would you want to watch a movie a second time? And I was like, because I feel like I didn't get enough out of it the first time. And so like that's like where I realized there was a difference in the way that I saw stories than what other people saw them. And as that grew over time, fast forwarding way into the future, like Casey Neistat starts daily vlogging. I find him maybe 3 or 4 months into him vlogging, and I just become, I mean, If there's ever been a rabbit hole moment other than like falling in love with my wife, it was that.
Oh,
like
yeah.
it was like tripping and just falling straight down. There was no like gradual hill, it was all the way down. And so I became obsessed with the idea of like the Canon 80D and then how does he do the microphone and how does he set up shots and is he like going to put the camera down, hitting record, going back, walking and then going back. Like all the logistics I became fascinated with. I would say the first tactical kind of like hands-on moments were when I was in middle school. I had Windows Movie Maker. My dad was deployed, and I was like editing an away message for him. So yeah, 2000 and probably 2, 3, 4, kind of that area. And so, kind of moving into high school, we had a teacher who allowed us to do like a video project as a replacement for a final. And so some friends and I got together and we filmed down on the creek front here in Hodgenville. And it was like, that was our project. And I just remember being like, wait, so this is seen as like an actual thing, so much to the point where it counts in place of a final. And so that began to open up my eyes so that when I get into college, I'm taking these classes and they're in media and they're in film and they're in communications. And so all of these kind of aspects of the degree program I was in start exposing me to these things. So now I'm editing a lot. Now I'm picking up a camera for the first time. Now I'm seeing a professor explain story arc for the first time. And so I have all these things kind of going in, and they get lit on fire a few years later with the Casey Neistat stuff. And so yeah, that was probably how like my love of storytelling and gear came about. And I think for a long time, the gear thing became the obsession because it was everything I didn't have.
Right.
And so I kind of hit this creative frustration when I had been watching Casey's vlogs for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, where I was like, I want to make stuff, but I don't have anything to make it with. And so again, I found my mom's camera. It's a Nikon like D3500 or something, and it had a video setting on it. No autofocus, I think. But it was the first time I was able to make like video content. And so first thing I noticed is terrible is the audio. And so then I start trying to solve that problem. And that's like another love that I have of how this journey with video is. You're constantly telling stories through problem solving.
Right.
That's
Oh, yeah.
all this is.
Yeah.
It's just problem solving. And so yeah, I think that's where it kind of took off. And so I mentioned earlier, like when I had my iPhone, that ended up being the easiest. So instead of having to set up this camera and the lens and all that stuff that I didn't understand at the time, I found that I could set my iPhone in a windowsill, record myself talking, and then really make it more compelling through an edit. And so like jump cuts, overly obsessed with them.
Yeah.
And so putting music under them and like title text over the screen. And so the edit became like my playground. And so that was, I mean, I don't know, that was probably that way for several years. And then the nonprofit I was working at the time talked them into buying a GoPro, did some overseas making of videos, and it just, man, it took off, you know, made the rigging out of the PVC pipe to put the GoPro on with a mic on top, and telling a story that so many people had no familiarity with, bringing a world to them they didn't know, but making it tangible, and then seeing people go and serve and help in schools and build different places, like seeing how that storytelling motivated people to go around the world to do that, I was like, oh man, this is powerful. And so that's where it kind of went to its next step. Transitioned careers, got into the communications side of things. And so then it wasn't just video, but it was everything to them press releases and coming up with like marketing strategies and thinking in not just the next video, but the next 12 to 18 to 24 months for communications plans. And then that was overwhelming. So it was like, okay, let's get into spreadsheets and calendars to make sure that everything's planned out. And then a very disorganized person, kind of like overnight, I had to become organized. But it all started because as, you know, a 4 or 5 year old, I became obsessed with stories.
And here's my question, because I know you at that point. That's kind of when our stories collide, correct?
Right.
And so you're working for the school system doing that.
Yeah.
Where did that start come from? Because this is kind of like...
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
And this is in a year where like it's a little popular to have like that guy on payroll, like, you know, like doing the media stuff,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's also like, do we need this guy?
100%.
You know what I mean? Like that's what companies, schools are thinking.
Yes. So I got an email when I was still working at the nonprofit that said, it's from the director of technology, and they said our current media person is leaving. Would you be interested? It's very part-time. And it's like, well, I already have another job, but this would fit in. It's not very far from my house, all those things. My wife was teaching in the school system at this point. And so I went and met with this person, and it sounded great, but the superintendent walked through completely unplanned. And halfway through that meeting, they just happened to be visiting through the school building at that point. And when he sat down and described to me his vision of like the power of storytelling, I was like, this guy gets it. And so that's when it began to take off. And it started out as just doing videos, like helping out with stuff. But then they needed help with communications, crisis communications, all that stuff. And so then it just evolved. And then the pandemic hit. And then all of a sudden it was like, everybody stop. This is now our primary way of communicating. And so what happened is, to your point of not a lot of people were doing that, we were the only people in the state.
Right.
And probably I would dare say, maybe this is a little ego, but everywhere I knew of that I could find, they were putting out content from the point leader of the district. Because schools were kind of like one of those central parts of the pandemic that were like everyone was aware of, because everyone's got kids at home. And so we were the only ones putting out content that was clear, concise, and dependable. And then on the comm side of things, I was jumping in and moderating the comments and engaging people, because first off, everyone was scared. No one knew what was going on. There was a lot of feelings, anger, sadness. And so being able to take someone who was really angry in the comment section about something, be able to kindly and gently engage them. And all of a sudden I start seeing like the power of like, not only is storytelling powerful, but so is like communicating with people as fellow humans. And I was hooked, man. Like it was at that point where it's like, this is what I want to do.
Well, I think that's a great point too, just about the level of entry as well, because I didn't really realize that until you just said it. And I remember there was a moment during the pandemic when I saw what you all were producing, and I was like, whoa, like they're producing content, which was really unheard of for a school district. And I remember seeing that, and I was like, that is very interesting. And I was like, and I was almost like, because I was doing video, and I was thinking that is a very good investment for a school district, because the story is very precise and it's coming directly from the leaders. And like you said, like no leader, superintendent of a school was going directly in front of the camera, really. Like, I mean, maybe releases here and there, but not like saying like, hey, here's what we got going on, here's how we're gonna like fix it. And I think that is a very good point too, to like just kind of highlight. That was 4 years ago, roughly, And so schools are just now starting to like, not even just schools, companies are just now starting to develop this thing where, oh yeah, if we put our leadership in front of the camera, like we can have a precise and a direct story to the consumer. And I say that because like companies are just implementing that, and so the level to entry is so easy, like right now. Like it is the best time. Like some people ask me like that, are you gonna be creating stories in 20 years? And I'm like, brother, stories are just taking off. Like videos are just taking off. Like we don't even like, it is gonna become one of the biggest trades there is, I believe, like, cause everybody has a story that they need to tell. So who's gonna like help tell it, And
I think it's important. You bring up a really good point. It's important that when young people or early on creators are asking themselves, is this a viable career to get into? I think it's really important to not watch the hot takes on either side on social media, because social media isn't really a great place for advice a lot of times anyways, even though the irony of saying that, with this. My point in it though is there's a lot of nuance that comes from talking to a practitioner. Obviously we have a vested interest in this like industry continuing, but what I will say just from my experience of working in it for a decade plus now is how we do it changes, but the reality of what we're doing at its
Right.
core is staying the same. And so, yeah, is AI changing things? Of course it is, but it's not everything's going away overnight. Things are changing, okay, but everything always changes.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is sometimes I hear people say, well, I'm afraid to get into it because everyone's getting into it. Well, that's just not the case.
Right.
How many people do you and I talk to that they're like, hey, if you can send anybody our way, because
Right.
our workloads
Yeah.
are rather full, and we can't take on every client.
Right.
The reality is we need more people.
Yeah.
So I would say that's where I'll end my story of just saying I fell in love with the comm side of things because of the way that it allowed me to see how stories legitimately change things. All the way up until last year, produced a documentary that went before the state legislators here in Kentucky with about $2 billion worth of asks. And not everything happened,
Right.
but the reality was it was able to be centered around a story of 3 people,
Yeah.
and that's how powerful stories are. You light that fuse and then
Yeah.
see what happens. So,
I think that's where our stories really, really like correlate is we just have a love for getting the story out.
yes.
But I think where we are very different are, I think our love for the methods are just kind of going in different directions. Like I'm really, really, really into video, and I think you're really, really into communicating it in a lot of other ways. Writing, what would you say like are your most passionate ways of?
So I love the tools of video, writing, and photography. The thing I love the most is strategy. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
That's the question I'm asking
Yeah.
myself with all of my clients. I can do all those things that you need me to do, but the question is why?
Yeah.
What's the point? And that's fun to
Yeah.
me, is figuring out the why behind the what.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's where we're very like different, like just the methods along what comes with a storyteller, like
Yeah.
or with telling the story is like that's where we're very different. So
Okay, let's do this. Are we still good on time? I think we're still good on time. Talk to me about, let's just trade back and forth. Practical tips, lightning round, 30 seconds or less. Practical tip number 1, if someone is a young, let's just go with the term. If they're an early creator, right, they're in their early days, what's a practical piece of advice?
So number 1, like my number 1 would be video what you love. Number 2 would don't play the compare game. That's something I struggle with for a long time.
Yeah.
For someone wanting to get into the field is like I never felt like I was good enough, and that's something I still struggle with. You know, like I made a video today, like for my YouTube channel, and it was just like the entire time I'm like, I'm not this guy that I think I am, but yes, I am. Like I am the guy. Like I can just be myself. Don't play the compare game. So video what you love, photograph what you love, tell the story of what you love, and don't worry about anybody else. Like you're on your own path. That's my top 2 right there.
I would say my top 2 are start where you are. The iPhone, anyone, so here's the thing. If you were like I was and obsessed with the gear, you're focusing on the wrong thing as an excuse to not do the thing. So instead of focusing on what gear you don't have, start focusing on the stories you can tell with the gear that you do have. Practical example, we would love to have podcast mics in front of us right now. We're building this thing slowly. So we have...
Well, and I kind of like it.
It is kind of nice,
I kind of like
right?
it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's pulling my shirt down, but it's fine. But that's like a practical example. We're like, screw it. We could wait until
cares?
this, ambiguous future, but we're starting where we're at. So start where you're at. Number 2, I would say, is understand the story that you're trying to tell.
Okay.
So if you're telling a story about the sunset that you saw last night, don't just say, saw this beautiful sunset.
Right.
Talk about how it affected you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the story.
That is good because, and that goes back to kind of when, like, I love to listen to audiobooks right now. And, like, I'm listening to some audiobooks and they're describing, in the scene, like, what were the waves doing? And just, like, listen, and then I'm like, oh, my gosh, I feel like I'm at the beach right now.
That's right.
But I forget that, like,
Yeah.
even in video, like, how are we gonna tell the story? That's something like I sometimes forget is like don't focus on the big picture. Just what are the little details that help.
And things like sound design, or color grade, those things impact our perception of the story. All right, go for it. Go 2 more.
This may even actually be top, because now that I was thinking of it, don't be afraid to be mentored. Like, I would love for someone that's, and I mean this gracefully, because a lot of people tell me like they want to get started, but they don't really like want to go throughout the process. Like, I think, you need to like, it's good to have hobbies, but make sure like this is actually what you want to do before you ask the mentor. But people who know a lot, typically, I would hope if they're a good person, typically want to share what they know. Don't be afraid to say, look, I would love to just shadow you for however long you'll let me shadow you. You don't even have to pay me. I just want to be around you and see what you do. Like, some people charge like thousands and thousands of dollars for people to be just in their presence, but find someone that's good at it and just say like, hey, can I just be around you and just learn? Like, I think if I would have done that early on, I would have saved a lot of trouble. But
my best piece of advice, and I can hang my hat on this one and be done with the podcast. Might get me canceled in this world. Free work. Free work. So every life-changing client actually replied to Eric Floberg's story. He posted a story about like free work and someone was upset with him about it. So I replied to his post of that and I was like, listen, every single one of my quote-unquote life-changing clients came from free work.
Yeah.
Every single one of them.
Yeah.
One of my biggest life-changing clients, she was the one who encouraged me to go out on my own. I accidentally ended up in a Zoom call with her. And that's a story I'll tell another time because it's really cool. She knew about me from a piece of work that I had done that she benefited from. And she put the two together that I was the one that made it. The school system, I started making tons of content for free, just volunteering before they ever emailed me.
That's a good one.
And so all I'm saying is when you put good stuff out into the world, someone's going to see the value. And of course, the nuance to that is don't be a doormat. Like charge your prices once you get started. But anyone that says don't do free work, you need to know your value, I'm just sorry, man.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets to start out like that.
Well, and the people you're doing the work for know you're doing it out of like a love for it or experience for it, Like that, there's no motive. What other motive is there? Like when you're doing it for free, maybe, to get publicity, but.
Well, and here's the reality. You can build the skills of business later on where you begin to say things like, okay, let's have contracts. Let's have a price setting conversation. Let's do this. And to where you learn not to get walked over. But when you're just getting started, the one thing you have is time.
Yeah.
It's time.
It's good.
So. Give me one. Let's land the plane. Give me one like killer last piece of advice for somebody that wants to get started.
Let me think here just for a second.
And the reason we're crushing our drinks today is because it's like 95 degrees outside. We got a daggone tornado watch going on.
I would say my next one, and it kind of piggybacks off the mentorship one. I would say collaborate, and I think that collaborate goes with like. Number one, people who have been in it a little longer, but then number two, people who haven't been doing it a little longer. And what I've realized, so this is our second day just in this studio, like actually working. Like we've been doing a lot of work in here, but like we've just kind of been like, all right, we need to get some of our actual work done. And what I've realized, I've already learned so much because there's things that I do that you don't do, and there's things that you do that I don't do. And like we've just been bouncing like ideas back and forth. And I've already learned so much about creating, about business. The list goes on, but like I think we have this idea in our mind that like we have to be doing it alone and we can't let people see it until like it's completely finished, and that's not the case at all. Be willing to let people like see your work before it's actually like out there, because what you'll realize is it's probably going to get a little bit better if you let someone else who has a different perspective, has a different like, no pun intended, but lens like on the world. Like it's just going to get a little bit better before you actually let it go to everybody to see. So that's when some of my best work has came when I've just allowed for collaboration.
Okay.
You know,
All right, man. Well done.
I love it.
So are we good with the next topic? Next topic of the podcast being the top things to avoid if you want
Yeah.
to stay in the business for a long
I
time.
would love that.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode, or this episode, however frequently we're going to do this, of the Archive Podcast. See you later.
Peace.